Hey everybody, welcome back to another video with Gem Mint Masters. Today's video is going to be something I've been looking forward to for a long time, and I hope it's something you all find some value in as well. I've been a collector for a long time, but ever since I got into grading and have become intentional around my personal collection, I've learned a ton and I've definitely hit some certain milestones along the way. So the video today is going to be about building your personal collection, but most importantly, upgrading your collection. So what do I mean by upgrading, you say? Everyone may have a different definition of this, or maybe that's not even the main driver of your collecting journey. But, I would say at one point it was not mine as well. But from what I've learned over the past few years alone, and I've really decided to go this route. And I got to say, I'm really enjoying it too. As I've said in the previous videos, my collection of players and cards to me are investments. And most importantly, I look at them as long-term investments. So like any long-term investment, you're monitoring it in the short term, and you're really determining from time to time if it still makes sense as a long-term investment. If you get to that point where you think maybe it no longer is, you pivot, you sell, you change to something else, etc. I've really taken that approach myself, and I'm going to show you guys a few examples of what I mean and how maybe you can learn and how ultimately we can really learn together. So, all right. So I've broken my personal collection into 3 distinct groups. As I focus on building my collection, again, ultimately upgrading it, this is really the barometer I've chosen to use that logically makes sense to me. I want to start also by saying that everything in my personal collection is graded, and most likely I go for PSA 10 graded cards as well. So with that being said, I mean, these phases can really be different for you if you have, let's say, raw cards, maybe you have different grades of cards, etc. So, I say I'm lumping this into 3 groups. Yours might be different. Starting with phase 1, I look at that really being mainly lower value cards of the players I collect. And a good example would be base cards. I don't have any in these slabs. I'm just going to show you. Got a couple here. We got a base card of Victor Wembanyama Select and a base insert. So not silver, nothing not numbered, nothing like that. So phase 2 are cards that are more rare on the spectrum, such as non-numbered parallels. I'll have a lot of those to show you as examples in here as well. And then phase 3 is where I look at it as either numbered parallels, short print or super short print cards, and possibly autographed cards. Personally, I haven't gotten big into autos, but that's maybe something I chase down the line, but I really haven't determined that yet. But I've got some great examples of definitely of phase 2 and phase 3, and I think phase 1 is pretty self-explanatory, but when I get into some of the numbers, I'll kind of compare some, phase 1 examples, and you'll kind of see from there. All right, so let's start with some of my collecting qualifiers that I use. I have 4 stacks of cards here of players that I'm currently collecting with the goal of collecting long-term. Got Victor Wembanyama, Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Donovan Mitchell. These are all basketball, obviously. My main collection is basketball, and I do some football as well. But for this video, I'm going to kind of just use example of basketball. And I think you'll get the gist of it, regardless of whether it's one sport or multi-sports, stuff like that. So the qualifiers I use, first off, is probably the most obvious one. It's gut feeling or passion for a certain team or player, which I assume every collector has. You really got to like the player, believe in the player that you're collecting, whether, again, it's a team thing or just an individual thing, and you really feel like that player has, a long-term potential. So with that being said, kind of the second thing is the player's projected career or longevity, or even their performance up to this point. Wemby obviously hasn't been in the league for very long, but there's a lot of hype around the guy. His collecting market is huge. He has a ton of believers. He backed it up with numbers last year. Yeah, it's still early, but I think there's a lot of believers in the guy having a really long-term career. So, you know, I'm kind of banking on that myself. But it's interesting because generally I will try to stick to established players. But again, in the case of Wemby, players that I feel are on a path to make a lasting impression on the league or the collector market or both. And then lastly, as a qualifier for myself, is really the type of card. As you may or may not know, a collector's market drops off significantly once they've completed their rookie year. So what I mean by that is I'm talking about, let's say, like second year base cards. Generally, those are pretty much worthless. I hate to say that, but that's really the case. You wouldn't really see yourself grading a Patrick Mahomes 2018 Donruss base card. There's a little bit of value in it, but really long term, there really isn't much. But when it comes to base cards, the rookie card will always maintain a certain level of value. Now you'll also, again, have short prints, super short prints, and autographs after year one. But personally, for me, I generally stick to rookie cards as part of my discipline to keep it easy and honestly keep it fun. Again, there's so many cards out there these days that if you tried to collect everything, it would just be next to impossible. And I don't know about you guys, but I've got a budget. I definitely can't collect everything. So, you know, one thing, again, if I stick to rookie cards, I do enjoy, for example, trying to build a variation rainbow, as it's called, with certain players. And I've got one here that I'll show you that's a pretty awesome example of that. Yeah, so kind of that's my strategy. So those are the qualifiers I use. If you think differently, feel free to add it in the comments. I'd love to hear kind of what you guys do. And, you know, how you go about collecting, like what are your tips, what's your mindset, all of that. So, all right. So I'm going to move some of these kind of off to the side, and dive a little bit into each one as we go. Wemby, I'm not going to get into too much, but these other ones I think I'm going to really dive a little bit more into the examples. I'll show a couple of the Wemby cards, but I think I'll drive the point home with these other ones. All right, so again, we've got the 3 phases. Phase 1, as I said before, funny part about this is I really don't have a lot of base cards graded anymore. I've pretty much gotten rid of all of those, but I've done it through upgrading into some of the cards you're going to see today. You know, when I first really started getting into this, I was grading every Wemby card I could think of, base cards, you know, included, and it's a lot. There's a ton of cards. The value just continued to drop over time, and I realized kind of, okay, I need to rethink this strategy and kind of understand this a little bit better. So, you know, as I said, phase 1, base cards, inserts, etc. does not include short prints, parallels of the players, but then that's where we really get into phase 2. So, you know, as a collector, why do I want to move beyond phase 1? My reasoning is, you know, there's a few reasons, I guess, a few factors. I would just say, you know, the card companies for the main thing are printing more and more base cards every year. So the population of base cards for sets will continue to rise, and the market at some point will top out at the value these cards can sustain. When I get into some of these numbers, I'll show you some really good examples of that. Secondly, as of 2020, I think all of us remember that year very well. There's been a well-documented grading boom since 2020. What exactly does that mean? So I'm going to give you kind of a real-world example here. Take Luka Doncic, who came into the league in 2018. So again, that was before the grading boom, as we said, in 2020. At that point in time, people were obviously grading cards still, but a good percentage of his cards were remaining as raw cards, changing hands multiple times via sale, trade, card shows, whatever you want to say. And then now we fast forward to today. Cards are literally going straight from the pack to PSA, and they're going in bunches. And it's interesting. Watch some of the videos today, and you'll see. I do it in my own videos. I have my card savers ready to go, and I'll put them right in there and get them ready to grade, and literally send them off within, you know, a day or two once I ripped them out of the pack. You're going to hear a lot more not only about the raw to grade strategy as well, which again is something I do in a lot of my videos, but about the strategy, again, of building up large quantities of base cards like that Victor Wembanyama select I showed earlier and submitting them to grading in huge numbers. So, you know, with the PSA population report, which is something I really heavily rely on, it's free for you guys to access, for anybody to access, readily available through a simple Google search. So if you're curious about that, what I will normally do, like let's take Anthony Edwards, for example, I'll just type in 2020 Optic Basketball PSA Population Report. And that's where, as soon as I type that in, it takes me right to the Google search. Click on that, and then you can search by any player that you want to. It's pretty cool. And so I'll use a couple more examples of base cards and kind of give you a sense of how the population is, how it's moving, and really kind of where, again, my mindset has shifted. So I'm going to use Luka again as an example, but I'm also going to use Wemby, who's brand new to the collector market within the last year. So as we know, Luka came into the league in 2018. So that was, you know, 6 years ago versus Wemby, which was just 1 year ago. Luka's base Prism rookie, that's the one I'll use for conversational purposes today, sits at a population of just over 38,000 cards for his base Prism rookie. That's crazy. Huge number. And then the gem rate, which is a PSA 10 graded card. So when you hear somebody say gem rate, they're referring to, out of all the cards graded, how many are PSA 10s and what is the percentage compared to all of the cards as a whole that are graded. So that one is around 53% for Luka. So roughly half of the cards that have been submitted are getting PSA 10s. All right, so Wemby is a comparison. The population sits just over 36,000. So it's almost the same number as Luka. And again, Wemby's only been in the league for 1 year, and the gem rate is 61%. So it is like 8 to 10% higher gem rate. So again, that goes back to what we were saying about how a card will basically come right out of the pack, go straight to grading. And when you do that, you have a lot better control over the quality. People are paying a lot more attention. Hopefully that's translating at the production level, that the quality control is better, so on and so forth. So again, with what we're just talking about, simple math tells us that even though there's a 6-year time difference between Luka and Wemby, the hype and the expectations of these two players are very equivalent. Not only are we sitting at the same number of graded cards, but we're actually sitting at a higher gem rate for Wemby, meaning that the market has become saturated, I guess would be the right word, with these base cards, and this will only continue to build. Again, it's only been a year, if even. So just imagine where these numbers will be, you know, as each year goes on. You know, it will start to tail off at some point, but that's just the reality of it today. Now, do these cards still hold value? Absolutely, they do. But in my mind, again, the better long-term investment is in the more short printed cards, where the populations will eventually top out at a certain level, and we can have more control over the scarcity and the value of them, which is great. All right, so that's phase one. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Again, it's really about just, you know, simple base cards, so on and so forth. They're readily available, easy to find in a PSA 10, or find a clean copy to send and grade yourself in a PSA 10. So yeah. All right, so now we're going to go on to phase two, and these two stacks right here are going to be great examples of phase two. So I'll drill into these a little bit, and I'll share some numbers with you guys. So again, this is where we start to get into the parallel versions of the base cards, but we're not yet into the numbered or super short print versions just yet. These cards are shorter printed, and you'll see that in the numbers in a second, but will ultimately end up much higher than some of the numbered variations that I'll show kind of toward the end. So I'll start with Anthony Edwards. Now remember, his rookie year was in 2020, right at the beginning of the grading card boom. So the numbers might show a little bit of that in what we see. So I'm going to use the base card as a comparison. And these, again, remember, these are all graded cards. Everything is graded. So that's the example. When I say a number, it's all about the graded version. So the base card of Anthony Edwards, there are 5,835 of this particular variation, but the base version of it. So, and out of that, there are 2,971 PSA 10s, so a gem rate of 51%. Now we have the pink here, let's say. So this one, there are 855 graded. So we're only at 15% of the total number of graded cards on this one versus the base card. And there are only 228 PSA 10, so there's only 27% gem rate compared to 51% on the base card. Mind-blowing. Next, we have the purple shock here. There are 510, so even less graded than the pink, and 125 PSA 10s, so 25% gem rate. This year, for some weird reason, quality was horrendous on especially on these parallels. Again, if you compare the 51% base card gem rate to 27 and 25 on this one, it's crazy. But what's even crazier is you'll hear on these next two. All right, so this one here, Purple Pulsar, only 257 graded of this one, so about half the number of the Purple Shock, the one I just showed, but almost the exact same number of PSA 10s, 119 versus 125. So this has a 46% gem rate. So something to think about when you're looking for, let's say you want to grade these cards yourself, look at the gem rates. They're all over the place. What does that say? Does it say that this particular variation grades better or the quality was better when they produced it? I would say those are some pretty safe assumptions you can make. So I think we'll close it off with the blue velocity here and show you that there's almost 2,000 of these graded, 1,982. So we're already talking 8 times the number of these versus like the Purple Pulsar, for example. And there's also 1,276 PSA 10, so 64% gem rate. So this actually gems better than the base card does. Something to think about. There's still a lot of value in this because, again, the population is still under 50% of the base card in the PSA 10s. So there's still a huge premium. So again, just to kind of recap, 15% of the, there's about 15% of this graded versus the base cards. Purple Shock, there is about 9% of these graded versus the base card. Purple Pulsar, 4%. This is a card that came out of the, I think it was either the Fanatics exclusive box or Target exclusive box. You got a pack of these, so there's not a ton of these out there. And that's something you can actually find pretty easily. And then these came out of the cello packs. 34% of these compared to the overall population of base cards. So hopefully that'll give you a good example. Again, we're talking phase 2 here. So yeah. So we'll do the same thing just really quickly for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. His rookie year was 2018. So this is even 2 years before the grading boom with Edwards. So you should, if the numbers should be pretty close. Again, these guys, fairly equivalent hype, market, expectations for them as players. Maybe SGA blossomed a little bit later, but let's just see how the numbers compare and then kind of show you guys. So I've only got 3 here, so this won't take too long, but the Optic base, 5,266 cards, so it's really close to the numbers around Edwards. PSA 10, 2,478, so 47% gem rate compared to Edwards at 51. So really close, really consistent. That's good. That tells us that the quality overall is pretty good. So now we'll look at the pink. 405 of these graded, super low number of these graded for some reason. And only 173 PSA 10, so 43. So much more consistent with this versus the base card, 43%. With the Edwards, it was 27. So very interesting. Again, based on the year and the card, you just never know what you're going to get. These can be all over the place. This one is pretty fascinating to me. This is the Shock Parallel. So this one came in, I believe it was like a mega box. You got the whole set of rookies. So this is a fairly common one. 3,129. So there's 59% of these compared to the base card. So there's a ton of the Shock out there. But only a 30% gem rate, 951 of these in a PSA 10. So that's still a pretty good number as far as collecting goes, having a long-term piece like that. There still aren't a ton of them out there. And then last, we got the Blue Velocity, and much like the Edwards, super high gem rate on these. So if you're looking for a card to grade you want to start a collection with, I mean, the numbers are going to tell you to go after the Blue Velocities. 668 of these and 392, so 59% of these are getting 10s. Crazy, which is great. But then if we look at the overall market, there's only 8% of these in existence compared to the number of base cards that are graded. 59%, as I mentioned, on the Shock, because those were pretty readily available to buy. And then this one's at 13%. So there aren't a lot of these out there. So that's, you know, again, if you're looking for somebody to collect, certain cards to collect, that should give you a good picture of that. So, as you can see, Phase 2 and Phase 1 have some very distinct differences. Gem rates overall are pretty consistent, but the volume is the huge differentiator here. There's going to be a market cap on the volume of the shorter printed cards, while the base cards will reach a much higher cap. In this comparison, it was roughly about 10 to 20 times the number of base cards versus the shorter print ones. So, all right, so that's Phase 1 and Phase 2. So now we get on the final phase of Phase 3, and I'll say for now, maybe we'll move to Phase 4. Who knows? As we start to learn more and stuff like that. So in Phase 3, we talk about numbered cards, both very low numbered, modestly numbered, along with like any SSP super short print cards or autos. We don't have any autos, but we do have one example of a super short print card, and I'll kind of explain a little bit about that. And with the autos, like, I'll just throw this in there for a comment, like, those will generally be numbered, so they will maintain the same level of scarcity as some of these ones we're going to show, but they will have a value bump in terms of having the auto versus not having one. That autograph is something collectors really want, at least a lot of them do, but personally, I don't know why, I just haven't really gone down that road. But that can be, maybe that's a Phase 4 we consider, so. So I'm going to use Donovan Mitchell for this one. This is one of my favorite players. He's a well-established veteran player, came in the league in 2017, perennial all-star, and widely considered one of the top 10 players by the experts. And the stats numbers show it as well. So again, if we look back at like Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Wemby, expectations, hype, all pretty big. Maybe less in the terms of Mitchell, but in maybe a small collector market, but again, he does have a very solid market, and the numbers will indeed show that. So I'll get into those and show you. So I'm going to use the Optic base again as our kind of baseline, and the overall number of Optic base rookie cards for Donovan Mitchell are 7,406. So that's higher than the others, but again, he's been in the league longer, so that's to be expected. And then the PSA 10, 3,935 at a 53% gem rate. So again, very consistent on that. And so again, we're talking Phase 3 now. So these rest of these numbers are going to be vastly different. This is going to be somewhat mind-blowing when I kind of tell you about some of these. And this is why I've really kind of made it a focus on myself to get to this point and get to Phase 3, because I see so much more value in these cards longer term. So, all right, I'm gonna start with this checkerboard. This is what we call a super short print card. These are not numbered, but you'll hear the term case hit or something like that would apply to a card like this in checkerboard. And the graded population will tell you kind of where this is at. So there are only 24 of these in existence graded, 24 total, only 7 in a PSA 10. So that right there tells me that it is a 29% gem rate. And then if we look at just the overall graded population, we have not even hit 1% of this versus the base card. So again, that really tells you that the scarcity, the rarity of a card like this, it's not easy to find. And think about, like, let's say you go to buy this, you go to sell it. the market can really dictate anything at this point. There's not a lot of sales history. Let's say this is a card you really want. A seller might put this out there for, I'll just throw out a random number. Let's say they put it out there for $1,000. They may leave it out there as long as they feel they need to, because they know more of these are going to be coming into the market. So this has been interesting. I would say it's been a fun part for me, but man, it is challenging to find cards like this, but to also be smart about it and find them and get them at a good price that you feel comfortable with. Time will tell what the true value is on something like that, but man, it is definitely, it's like the thrill of the chase, right? It's been very fun to me, I would say. So I definitely enjoy doing this. All right, so the next one here, again, we're getting into the numbered cards. We have the pink, numbered out of 25. So right there's only 25 of these in existence, but how many are graded? 6. Only 6 of these. And again, we go back to thinking about, you know, there's a lot of factors here. Some of these might still be in sealed packs. Some of these might be in people's collections. Maybe they're damaged and they don't want to grade them. Who knows? So the nice thing about a numbered card like this, or 25, it's never going to reach a higher number than that graded. And again, there's only 6 of these graded, only 4 in existence in a PSA 10. And again, we haven't even hit even close to 1% of the total number of graded cards versus the base cards. This stack is going to start to get higher numbered as it goes, and I'll kind of show you, compare a little bit, but we're still, like, the market is still so much more limited and smaller. So here we have the Fast Break Blue. This is numbered out of 50. So we went from 25 to 50. The previous card had only 6 graded copies. It says 27. So it's almost that additional 25 on top of that as a percentage. 56% gem rate with only 15 PSA 10s. And again, we're not even at the 1% mark. All right, next one here, Pink Velocity. This is out of 79. So slightly higher total overall population, but only 28 graded copies. So only 1 more than the previous card. 18 PSA 10s, a 64% gem rate. So the gem rate is going up a little bit. I would hope so, and I would expect that a card with lower print run, more value, should be scrutinized a little bit more at the production level. So I would say that is a good thing. But again, these are hard to find. All right, now we have the Fast Break Red, numbered out of 85. I actually subbed this one myself. I'm really proud of this one. There's not a ton of these out there. There's 43 of these. So a higher number, 28 PSA 10, so there's 65%. That was probably the lowest numbered one that I graded myself. A lot of these I either traded or was able to buy after selling some other cards, which is nice. But again, you can't always grade these yourself as well because you can't find them. So you just gotta go about it and do it the way that makes the most sense. All right, here we go. We got Fast Break Purple. This one is out of 155, so the numbers are starting to get up a little bit more. But again, there's only 58 total graded copies, 25 PSA 10s, only 43% gem rate on this one. So again, look at those gem rates. If you're trying to build a collection of cards like this that I am, it's not easy. It's not easy sending these off and grading them yourself. Weigh the time, the effort it's going to take for you to get that grade you want it. And, you know, again, focus. One thing you can do in your upgrading journey is focus on some of the lower end stuff, sell it in volume, and then go out and buy something like this. It's well worth the effort, trust me. All right, next one here, Lime Green out of 175. So again, a little bit higher number, 62 graded copies, 35 PSA 10s, 56% gem rate. So the gem rates are pretty consistent on these, which is nice. And then for this purpose today, the last example, the Fast Break Orange at 193. So that is the highest numbered card that we're going to have. 72 graded copies, 39 PSA 10s at 54% gem rate. So I think, you know, again, this is my journey. This is how I've done it to, you know, what logically makes sense about me in the way I go about this. But, you know, it really is just all about what makes sense to you. But hopefully this is something that you can find informative, helps you along the way, whatever it may be. So, you know, just to recap my collecting journey, which dates back to about 1987, which is crazy to say. I would say my journey has come the longest way in the last 4 to 5 years. I've learned so much with the amount of information, knowledge that is now available. It's mind-boggling how much information is available, as I talked about with like the PSA pop reports, you know, a lot of things like that. You've got websites like eBay and 130 Point that will give you sales history as far back as you want to go. You know, just so on and so forth. It's crazy, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about it too. Like how you go about collecting. Like, is this similar to your journey? Is there anything you're doing differently that you think is valuable? I love making this type of video as opposed to some of the other ones I've made, and I really hope it shows my passion for collecting. And I wouldn't doubt if I'm even learning new things in the coming weeks, months, years. I'm always looking to learn. So, and who knows, maybe I'll have a video in the not too distant future where I'm like, oh man, all that stuff I said, I learned even more. But yeah, so I know this was a bit longer video. Thanks for sticking around. Hopefully you guys learned something. Thanks for joining me. Best of luck in your collecting journey. Drop a like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks.